All right, everyone. Welcome to the Power Player panel. Um, I'm actually quite excited looking at the panelists here. Power players indeed. So let's get right to it. If we could do a quick introduction. I recently participated in this conference where everybody had to submit a bio, and in their wisdom, they required the bio to be limited to 140 characters, just like a tweet. So could I ask you for a quick introduction, tweet size?
Me first?
Yeah, why not?
I'm Amy Thomson, and I run ATM Artists, and I manage Swedish House Mafia and Chase and Status and LSO and various other people.
Hi, my name is Rijanto. I'm from Indonesia. We own and run Ismaya Group and Ismaya Live, which does 4, 5, 6 festivals a year and venues and clubs around the region.
David Levy from WME, partner in the agency, and we book, in the music division, we book lots of tours and for DJs and artists.
Eric Zoe, founder and CEO of A2 Live and Storm Festival.
John Boyle, my bio was 0 words. I'm Chief Growth Officer and CFO of Insomniac and Electric Daisy Carnival.
Hi guys, I'm Iqbal Ameer, Group CEO of the LiveScape Group, offices in Singapore, Malaysia and Jakarta.
I'm Robb Harker. I'm the owner and CEO of Supermodified agency that handles the Asian territory.
Fantastic. I'm Kurosh Nasseri, entertainment lawyer based out of New York. I've been working with electronic music for the past 24 years. My role is to ask a question and get out of the way so we can hear from the power players. So this week, these last 2 days, we heard a lot about challenges in an emerging market. We also heard about the excitement of being involved in this emerging market. So looking at this panel, I think all of you have maneuvered whatever challenges there might be with success. And so my first question is, what has been your approach to succeed in an emerging market with enormous possibilities? And we'll switch it up. Rob, why don't we start with you?
I think for me, I'd have to say flexibility because, I mean, it's an emerging market, but things are always changing here. And what's working one year isn't necessarily working a couple of years later. So it's just a question of being flexible with how things go.
For LiveScape, we've always tried to build brands, so event platforms, and we've tried to really emphasize on those brands. And it being a local brand helps a lot. So we try to gain the confidence of the local market first by introducing something that they can really be associated with, and then slowly innovate from there.
I think we have a lot to learn. I don't think we figured this quite out yet. You know, our brand is loud and big and expensive, and
Very.
So I think for me it's humility.
I think for us in China, the number one thing, I think the challenges that we face and how we overcome is to keep a very, very good relationship with the Chinese government because they could say and tell you what to do on everything you do here.
I think for us, it's listening. You know, every time we make mistakes in the region, we try and learn from them. There's a lot of new promoters and a lot of vested interest here, and I think the more we listen, the more we learn, and then we can put the resources in place to adapt to each version of what happens here.
I think for me, Indonesia is similar to China. It's one of the toughest markets to do business because it's not black and white in most of the cases with the government and the politics. But I think the key to success is just to understand the market, how to network, and how to create, you know, the best environment to do business in terms of delivering like a safe and secure environment for the customers.
For me, it was just coming as early as possible to each of the markets. So I came to the first Storm with Axwell, and we discussed collaborating with local talent 4 years ago, Eric. And India also, because Shalindra's here somewhere, going with Swedish House Mafia really early on in the market so that we were able to start our own social medias and ensure that we've been posting accurately on social medias in China, in India, and across Asia, so that by the time we come this time, and I'll let Alesso and Jolyn tell you what we're doing, and after we go here, we go to Korea to do the same again. You make your touring count by working with the cultures, but not jumping on the culture for the sake of it, to take the time to go through and find artists that you want to work with and to work as closely with the promoters as possible and to keep it very inward in the scene. Don't try and necessarily do it through your label.
So how does it work in your case, managing acts and having a focus or a strategy in this region? Presumably the acts that you manage are assigned to worldwide deals on the record side. How does that process work? Because obviously touring is one thing, but actually causing the artist's music to gain popularity and gain a foothold in this market is also important. How do you manage that?
For me, I'm so sorry to say this if Universal are in the room, but it was absolutely without any help from our major label, and I exclude Japan from that, who are actually incredibly on syncing touring and labeling together. For us, we received no help from our label in China in terms of growing the artist or having any kind of education on how to grow the artist, which sites to use, any kind of way to start social media, any social media planning. So for us, it was about coming here and finding the people that we found were like-minded. And in this case, it was Eric Zhou in China, and in Korea, it was SM Entertainment. And then bedding in with them, and then basically telling Universal, we're putting this record out, take it or leave it. And they let us do it. If I had the choice again, and anyone here who manages an artist and you're thinking of signing a deal, I would strongly recommend that you actually exclude Asia from your global deals and take your time to see whether or not your major label will react to you coming in and headlining festivals. And if they do, then you should give them that territory. If they don't, then you should keep it for yourself and find a more independent approach, especially now that Universal are banning exclusive streaming with Apple or Spotify, whatever, after Frank Ocean. If that was applying to me now, I wouldn't be able to have the meeting I just had with Jolyn about my rollout. So thankfully, Universal did let me step out, and I do love Virgin in the UK, but I didn't find that level of support at all, or any level of understanding as to the potential of EDM records in Asia at all from the labels.
Really instructive. So, David, do you find that with some of the other acts that WME represent?
I think Amy says a lot of common sense there. I think for us, what's interesting is since we acquired IMG a couple of years ago, we now have our own footprint in the region that's completely unique. We have 15 offices in Asia-Pacific, a couple in Australia. We employ nearly 500 people in the region, and we're in the fashion verticals, sport, film and television distribution, and so on. So what we're in the process of doing as we collaborate with the people that run these offices is we're starting to get a kind of a local knowledge and a local way of accessing media and social information. In fact, Amy has reached out to me before and had social media from our staff that she couldn't get anywhere else. And we're just trying to leverage those resources to sort of have a deeper understanding of what the possibilities are.
Okay, but what about recorded music? I mean, even with the IMG deal, I don't think that the reach of WME extends to recorded music. It's still the labels that are active in that sphere.
That's not strictly true.
You just need Arjan. Where's Apple? You just need that and TuneCore, and off you go.
I mean, we are...
Okay, so that's a self-released approach, basically.
Yeah, but that's not a self-released approach for me, because our meeting before this was with Eric, who is the owner of the two masters that we've created with Jolyn, and Eric and I figuring out how to do this with Jolyn's label, which is Warner's, and how to upload it directly, and so Eric can start his own TuneCore account. So it's a promoter direct service to Arjan, who's flown all the way here from America because Apple give a shit, and dealing directly with him to then gain exposure on not just his store, on all stores in China, but just do it yourself with local teams.
So, David, just to bring my question into focus, do you have a similar experience with some of the other acts that you represent? So, I understand that WME have developed incredible reach in other spheres of activity beyond just the touring. But when it comes to recorded music, is this something that you've seen with other acts as well?
Yeah, I think modern managers have to develop relationships with brands and other ways of getting your music out there. We're exploring how to get artists who have their publishing into either putting their music or creating music into our sport and fashion verticals as a way of, communicating. We have a venture developing here in China with Tencent, which may or may not have a music play later on, we don't know yet. But I think, in the modern electronic business, the record label is an option, but it's not the only option. And I think whether it's the Boiler Room conversation yesterday, which is one way of approaching it, or whether it's what Eric's doing with Budweiser, which I think is really interesting, I think we're always encouraging our clients to take that view. We're exploring right now, one of our DJs coming here and collaborating, recording, even teaching, just sort of put roots down and sort of get to understand the culture, and then I think those opportunities open up.
Eric, what is excuse me, what has your experience been in this market with the existing label structure, whether it's Universal or Sony or Warner's? You've obviously been successful in operating on a high level with your festivals, and part of your approach has been recorded music as part of the package in order to connect the dots with artists that are relevant in China. Have the labels been active in your endeavors? Have they come and say, how can we cooperate with you, or how can we cross-promote?
Unfortunately, no. These type of collaboration that we put together, for example, with Alesso and Jolene this year, this conversation is not a new one. Amy and I, 4 years ago, we talked about this. And obviously it took some time, but to put this collaboration together, it requires the labels on both sides to carve out this specific track, allowing us to release this track for promotional purposes. I'm not trying to go out and sell it. Of course, if we could put on iTunes and try to sell, make a little royalties or money from it, it's great. But that is not our goal. Our goal is to trend this track and chart them and get as much awareness as possible. Now, this for us is a strategy. Now, we're willing to back these tracks with budgets, marketing budgets, for one reason, is because I believe when you take a big artist like Jolene and put a big artist with Alesso together, you actually could create a seismic shift in this market. Because let's say, how many people go to a festival? 100,000? How many people watch it at home live? Maybe a couple millions. But when it becomes a major track with Jolene's popularity, and she has like tens of millions, when it's released on these music platforms, potentially hundreds of millions of people could listen to this track and be exposed to dance music. And now I know who is Alesso. Now I'm going to go online to Baidu or Google, if they have VPN, to research about this artist and discover the music that he has created in the past. So I think this is one of the marketing strategies that we come up with. And for us, it has been working out quite well. We did, for a number of years, started out with Avicii and Wang Lihong in 2014. Then we did Tiesto and Jane Zhang last year. And this year, another track with Jane and Jack Novak, plus Alesso and Jolene. So each year, we're going to do more of this in hope that other artist managers, whether it's local or international, they will come to us that if they do want to come to China, and this is a great platform for them to expose not only their music and also their name through this methodology.
Right. John, so you and I had a little chat about Insomniac Records, and I think you made a splash at this conference, whether intentional or not, about Insomniac going into India in a big way. So how is it from your perspective? I think Eric has described a very savvy way of leveraging recorded music as a tool in broadening the appeal of electronic music in this market. Will Insomniac Records play any role in Insomniac's endeavors in India?
Well, India has a very happening DJ scene. There's lots of very popular, very successful DJs in India. Our India lineup is going to be over half local acts. We do that because when we go into a new country, we want to kind of marry what we do with the local culture. We also do it, frankly, out of budget. It's more cost effective to tap into local talent, and we've discovered some great acts that we intend to sign and put out their singles. So we kind of fell into this as a strategy. It started in Mexico, really. And we're going into year 4 of Mexico, and it's our second biggest show in the world at this point. And we're bringing a lot of Mexican acts into America. Of course, Mexico, for all intent purposes, is kind of like Southern California. It's basically right there. So it's very different dealing with India, and we're looking at other Asian countries. And so we're really figuring it out as we go, but the label helps. And we do want to bring these Asian acts to America. We want to be the company that really helps expose that and truly make it a global business.
So Rob, going over to you, have you had any type of support from labels as you book tours through the venues that you've been booking with?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I think my focus has always been on the touring side of things. So when I approach this just from a touring perspective, the roots are down, like the DJs are coming. Most of these markets are now pretty established. You've got a couple of newer places in like Myanmar that are bringing out festivals. Excuse me. But the one thing we sort of noticed when I was sitting on a panel last year here and on other international conferences was the main question everybody was asking is why are there no Asian DJs breaking out of the scene? So that's kind of been the focus that we've been working on more recently, and we've signed a lot of Asian artists up.
Tell me about that. That was actually going to be one of my next questions. To what extent has that changed from since last year?
I mean, it's a relatively new project at this stage, but we just thought it was time to sort of give something back. I mean, like I say, everybody was asking the question, why are there no Asian artists? And the sort of recurring answer seemed to be that there was no platform for discovery for them. They didn't really get a chance to get out and make their name. The Asian artists that were touring were doing so on the back of club exchanges, or they might get leveraged onto a festival because their club is producing the pre-party. And as great as it is to see your name on an ultra flyer, the reality is you're playing stage 3 at 12 o'clock, and the only person there is the sound tech. So we are trying to create this new platform, which we've called East Collective. Supermodified has signed Mirn from Singapore, an artist named Ray Ray from Taipei, Kaku from Asia. We've got Goldfish and Blink in Malaysia, and an act called the PKZs in Tokyo. And we've sort of handpicked these artists. I mean, they're signed to Supermodified, but they're sort of ambassadors for this East Collective platform that we're working on, which, I mean, we're letting it grow organically to see how it's really going to fit into the market. But it's more about the goal, and the goal is to create a place where people can discover Asian artists and Asian music. And these kids will be our ambassador for the brand through events that we're going to be running and through social media platforms that we're going to be setting up. But that platform will be there for other Asian artists to also utilize and be discovered.
So, Iqbal, you made an interesting comment saying that, in the beginning, in terms of your strategy for success, and you highlighted the role of brands. For you, does that sort of take the place of what record labels used to do or theoretically do in your territory?
We don't have a very good history with labels because we're event organizers. When we book an act, suddenly out of nowhere the label becomes our friend.
Why? Because they want to get in?
Because we got the act, and then they're just like, oh, they hijack, they take over our interviews.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, Christian? Right? Yeah, so we don't actually have a very good history with labels. We don't like them very much. But how we do it in building brands and really focusing on that allows us to showcase talent that we believe in. So for instance, we've got a brand called It's a Ship, which is a music festival on a cruise ship, and we have a huge emphasis on local talent. So we do have the big headliners, the Knife Parties, the Dada Life, and put them on. In fact, East Collective is on that billing. They've got a stage on their own. We're putting them on a prime slot, and we're hoping that that pushes the local artist agenda a lot further.
Christian, what about in your market? Do you have a similar experience?
I would say like a few years back, it would be a similar experience, but I think in our market, I think the label has been, I guess, more approachable lately. I think the way we approach things is, of course, we understand that for them it's business. I think we just have to find a way for them to make more business in a way that they also support the acts that we bring in. So we're starting to collaborate with labels now to create compilations, like a new track or original track that we distribute to the labels that promote our brands and also promote our artists. That's what we're doing in Indonesia. But of course, working with the brands is also the next step, because I guess the brand has more resources. So we work with them, of course, also to promote the music, to promote the artists, while at the same time promote our platform also.
Okay, so the first day here with a really instructive presentation that really sort of focused on EDM and the popularity of EDM and how often that term is being searched here in this market. So that seems to be successful and on the tip of everyone's tongue. My question is, what about the less commercial subgenres? What about the acts that are perhaps less in the limelight? Like Amy, in your case, with Alesso, obviously you have a very recognizable, globally recognizable name, and you're having success here in this region. What about with the less recognizable names that you manage, that Chase the Status are well known, but perhaps not in this territory? How do you broaden this out beyond the top level EDM usual suspect names?
I mean, first of all, you've got to convince the artist it's worth their time to come, which can be hard for, they're tied to the studio and it's difficult for them to come down. Chase and Status actually did headline Ultra Korea, just gone. But again, it's a long process. Don't come and rush it and play some crappy slot at a festival. Speak to Eric or ask it or any of the promoters ahead of time. Plan that your record's going to come out, or your promotional item's going to come out near the tour. Make the tour count, and then plan that you're going to come back. Don't come and then leave and be like, yeah, I did it. Like, you got to. But if you're a newer genre, I mean, Eric and I have already discussed how much he's going to diversify into. You can't just have the top 10 I hate that word, house music DJs. You can't just have, oh my God, it's like an STD, like, oh. But the best house music DJs in the world, I mean, Skrillex just had like the biggest boiler room ever or something yesterday. I mean, what a G. Like, is he EDM? He's a rock guy, he's the best. So I think it takes a minute to start it, and then by definition, the demand of that creates demand to do something out, it just grows the same way it's grown everywhere else.
So do you sort of take a multi-year approach to this and looking at what can be accomplished in the region?
Yeah, same way we did the United States, and same way we do the UK. You don't over-tour, you go in, you make it count, you pay attention to those regions, you pay attention to the social media, and you make each tour count. You just never randomly tour. Everything has to tie together, and you go when the market's ready for you. And you each time you come, you sit with the Erics of this world, and you decide what the next step is. You sit with David, and you decide what the next, we went from Ultra Japan to the highest ever DJ slot at Summer Sonic this year in Japan for Alesso, because we didn't want to just stay within dancings, and now we'll go back and do hard tickets, and then we'll probably go back to Ultra Japan, because you have to keep moving all the time. But you have to have a kind of 5-year plan in your head, or you'll get lost. There's too many regions that need care and attention.
David, do you see this market broadening out, going beyond
I think it started already.
Okay.
I actually think, the term underground actually applies in this part of the world. It really is underground. You know, you can go to almost any country in this region and there'll be 500 people who want to dance to Dice or Richie or Taylor-Vas or whoever it is. I think it's important not to treat the region as a whole. You know, I think, you know, China is a completely separate unit to what you might deal with in Southeast Asia or Japan. So I think you have to look at each territory and you have to understand it on its own merits, its own values. You know, and some territories are going to move faster than others. You know, Japan came to EDM really late. Now it's huge. You know, and yet underground music's been very strong there for decades, actually. So I think planning is important. I think looking at each country separately is important. And then I think you have to find those people who, you know, I'm sure Rob's had this experience, you know, young promoters who perhaps don't know everything. You need to hold their hands, you need to encourage them, and you need to encourage the talent to look at investing their time, which might sound funny coming from an agent, frankly, but, you know, if you want to build a market, you can't look at every show as the payday, you know, and especially in this region because the travel and the expenses tend to be more, you know, more if you're coming from Europe. So that's how I feel.
Eric, do you see the potential to broaden out beyond the more accessible electronic music, you know, the EDM sound, to some of the subgenres, whether it's deep house, techno, trance? How does that, in your assessment, for China?
Well, definitely. For the most part of China, you still have to do, you know, big room EDM because that's what they know. But for cities like Shanghai, we are already diversifying into house, trap, and later on into live as well. So it really depends on where they are in terms of their understanding and education of the genre to know exactly what you need to do. So if we bring in, say, a Storm Festival to a new city in Tier 3, like Wuhan, where there are not a lot of events going on there, and we're gonna drop a bomb on Wuhan with Storm, multi-million-dollar budget festival, you can't go to subgenres. You just simply cannot recoup that investment. And then the marketing that we throw around it is nationwide. So we market every single festival that we have, not on a city-by-city basis, but on a nationwide basis. So we hope to fly people into these festivals. And there's a lot of people that actually, you know, chase after our festival, like groupies. You know, quite a few thousand people, actually. So, you know, by us doing this, we, you know, by introducing a brand like Storm to a new market in China specifically, we're not going to go multi-genre that fast. But looking at China as a whole, and looking at from our point of view, the underground market is booming, as evident yesterday with the Boiler Room. And we're seeing it happening in cities like Chengdu, Beijing, Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Hangzhou. Shanghai, obviously, is the biggest one. And we see, like, without the underground scene, the mainstream really have no pillars to stand on. So that is really our next move, to really develop the underground scene. I believe there's not enough shows out there. By having more of these shows out there, creating the supply, then you also could create the demand.
Fantastic. Just out of interest, how regionalized or how segmented is China as a market? I mean, coming in from the West, we just refer to China as one big market. But, you know, it's actually really instructive for me, for you to say, okay, well, you know, doing underground stages will work here, but it won't work in other parts of China. So how segmented is this market from your perspective?
It's very segmented. So a city like Shanghai, be considered by the rest of China as Europe. That's how different it is. If you go to Tier 3 or 4 cities, they're really still so far behind that the nightclubs are still having singers going on stage and singing Mando pop tracks. So it's and DJ booth is on the side with no LED screens. So if you tour someone to those type of clubs, the first thing the DJ will say, where is the DJ booth? It'll be as small as that translation booth on the back. So that's how segmented. So it not only is the preference of music, but it's also how the government reacts to this type of music, or even any music in general. I remember, I mean, just this year alone, we're going to Guangzhou to do Storm. The regulatory issues is so much more than I have to deal with in Shanghai. They have weird regulations on how you control the crowd. And you know, they throw out things like, if the artists don't want to show on time, I'm going to ban the artist. You know, crazy stuff like that. And yeah, it was a real nightmare, you know, with me and David, we have to go through this. But you know, we have to overcome these difficulties. And sometimes you need to also educate the authorities on what is this music genre about. So in hindsight right now, it's like, okay, we've done it, it's great, but what it is that it's so segmented, the rules are so different, the trends is actually, the interpretation of the same law is so different in different places that you need to really know how to localize when you enter a new market. So as a West, you know, from the West looking into China, yes, it's one piece of land called China, but when you get down to earth to China, it's actually 30 provinces, you know, 200 cities that act totally different from each other. The North and the South hate each other. South, East, and West, they look different. On the West side, everyone looks like Turkish, and then on the East side, you look more, Chinese. So this is China. It's a massive country.
Fantastic. Christian, you know, your market is, you have quite a large population in your market. How segmented is the market in your territory?
I think in our market, Indonesia, of course, the big city, Jakarta, the capital, is the most advanced in terms of music understanding. And then I think Bali is also part of that. So I think if you want to do underground kind of music, which we do a lot, Jakarta and Bali is the key territory. Outside that, I think you have to go to the second or the third biggest city, which you have to go mainstream. And then once you go beyond that, again, as I think what Eric said, we have to work with the Indonesian artists, I guess, to expand and reach to a wider audience. So for us, when we do a festival, it's of course you have to book, I guess, the EDM acts to headline, but actually it's the best way for us to educate the market regarding the other acts and the other genre. And that's why when we book the festival, we're quite diverse in terms of booking all kind of genres. And Indonesians love social media, they love YouTube, they love Spotify and all those kind of music streaming. So when they see the name on the billing, and they'll research, and by the time the festival comes, they'll understand the music. And this is the important way for us to educate.
So, Rob, what's your experience with the more quote-unquote underground genres of electronic music in the region?
Well, I mean, I think Asia in general has a very, very good, strong underground scene. It's just very tiny at the moment. And it is quite frustrating because the venues that you can put underground music in now are 200, 300, maybe 400 capacity. So it's like David and Amy were saying, to trying to convince these DJs to come out from America or Europe and say, okay, you're going to travel 3 times as far for a quarter of the money. And it's like you're a dog chasing your tail because they don't want to come out and do that. But until they do that, it's not going to help the market grow up to another level. So I mean, outside of those clubs, the only place to put underground music is on stages at festivals, and there's only a few a year that are sort of willing to do that. So yeah, it's kind of a frustrating situation at the moment, but I think there's definitely potential there for it to grow.
So this is actually a really, really interesting point. Do you think that festivals play that important of a role to sort of broaden the understanding of electronic music in the region?
Absolutely, because there's some DJs that just can't come if those festival offers, or won't come if those festival offers aren't there. They're just not willing to come out and play in a 300 capacity club.
I think the whole EDM thing's a bit of a red herring. The EDM is basically a gateway, you know, and what it does is it encourages people to understand what electronic music's really about when it comes to a live experience. It's about community. You know, it's about sharing, you know, dancing together, having fun. It's a pretty basic thing. And it's a sort of a mass way in. You know, a lot of people then become curious. They'll go online, they'll start researching, and that's kind of, actually, it's exactly how it was in the UK and Europe and America. You know, it's what Eric's saying is no different between LA and New York and Middle America, you know. What's interesting about EDM is it kind of seemed to capture a populist moment where it brought people together who never thought they would do that sort of thing. And as it passes through, you know, some people get curious, some people move on. But I think it's healthy because, you know, we're bringing a lot of people into our culture, and then they learn that it's not an event culture, it's actually rooted in a club culture. You know, the problem I think at the moment is the distance between event culture and club culture. We all came up through club culture. You know, event culture is, when you arrive with event culture, you don't understand the sort of the weekly kind of cultural impact of that. So I think as more people discover that, you know, I'm really into sort of promoting club culture. Event culture makes us all a ton of money, but it's ultimately not going to sustain the cultural part of our industry.
Great. So let's shift the focus to consumer brands, the sponsors that fuel much of the event side of our business. And I want to ask each of you what your experience has been in the region and working with consumer brands, you know, in terms of the promoters working with alcohol brands or other consumer goods and supporting your endeavors. I mean, what is the role in this region, and what is same or different in interacting with brands in forming that relationship? Amy, let's start with you.
I haven't worked with any brands with my acts in Asia that I can remember. But globally, obviously, I did Absolute Greyhound with Swedish House Mafia. I did Volvo, Leave the World Behind film with Swedish House Mafia. I've done, Miller Beer, hundreds of them, all very successful. I've had phenomenal experiences with brands. Absolute Greyhound, obviously, being the most exciting. Working with Carl Rinch was an incredible experience to do the animated video, and we rolled it out on a world tour, and it was just incredible. The fact that we got away with doing a pink grapefruit juice with an acid house record is really quite, you know, incredible. But in all honesty, I haven't done a brand deal in Asia yet because I believe I would be better off to do the groundwork as we've done with Storm and then hold out for when you hold all the cards. My worst fear is to come into a market like this where I don't fully understand it yet, and to do a deal with, no offense to Budweiser, but you're just in the room, so do a deal with Budweiser, do some record that has to be approved by 900 people, some agency gets in the middle, I hate the music video, and that's my lasting impression here. The longer you can hold out whilst you understand and whilst you do the work and you retain your own values so that then you can apply. Absolute Greyhound, we called all the shots, and we had a very great brand to do it with. I prefer to be in that position. So for Asia, I'm holding out until I find the perfect partner. But my experience with brands worldwide has been nothing but phenomenal. But you do have to pick who you work with. I mean, if you work with somebody for a check and they're awful, then it's going to be awful.
Right. Let's jump around a little bit. David, from your perspective, some of the acts that tour in Asia, have you had any experience working with brands supporting the tour, you know, acting as a sponsor of the tour, you know, across different countries?
A very long time ago, I started a project with Paul Oakenfold called Heineken Thirst, which I think was something of a template for ways that brands could integrate long-term with the culture. I'm a big fan, not to promote them because I don't have any investment in them or anything, but I'm a big fan of Red Bull Music Academy. I think just because they took the long view, and you know, I don't agree with everything they do, and it's not always a positive experience for every artist, to be fair, but overall, what they bring adds to the culture. I think that's what I want from a brand anyway, is I don't really want the check. You know, I think there are lots of ways to make money in this business without selling yourself out in that way. What I want is the partnership, the resource, the access, the longevity. And I think if that's available, then I'm up for making that deal.
Okay. Christian, how do you interact with brands, with sponsors for the events that you do?
I think for us, of course, we can't live without the brands and sponsors that support us. Because, you know, Indonesia, as I mentioned before, the GDP per capita is quite low. So we need the brand support and the sponsor support for us to be able to, you know, create a great product and great experience for everybody with a good lineup. So I think working with them over the years, it's amazing how it changed their behavior is the last 3-4 years. They might just be, you know, start a little investment and they're skeptical about the dance music industry. But over the years, they see what we've done, and they see, of course, the growth of the music itself. So they are more committed now and more creating a better platform, a better brand experience that integrating into the music without being so cheesy or oversell. And I think that's our job as a promoter, to mediate between the brands and the music and the artists, to make sure that it all goes in sync and it's a win-win situation for everybody.
What types of brands are sponsoring your events?
Before, it's mostly cigarette and alcohol, but now we reach a stage where consumer products like Unilever, which does a lot of all ages kind of products, are sponsoring our events. So I mean, like, we are able to kind of break the barrier between the sponsor that only does nightlife events into our platform.
Okay. Where do we go next? John, you've been quiet for a while. Does Insomniac work with brands here in the region, or do you not know yet as a new entrant?
Well, I mean, listen, we wouldn't be in India as quickly as we are without Budweiser. I mean, this literally happened in a couple of months, and we announced the show 3 months out. And we would never do that. What I think, I mean, for us, and we're the big guy in America. We need the brands because our productions are so big, and between production cost and talent cost, we can't make money without that sponsorship. But what we've done, and I think we've really revolutionized this in America, and our goal is to try to help this as we go abroad. We make the brand, it's not about a logo on a stage. It's not about, selling. The brand activation must add value to the show. And the brands can make the show so much better. I'll give 2 quick examples. Our presenting sponsor in Mexico is Dos Equis. And what Dos Equis did when we launched in Mexico, we do our show at a Formula One racetrack. You walk up these stairs into the grandstand, and then you come down into the venue. When you get at the top, you can see the whole venue. What Dos Equis did is they built this huge archway, like a welcome archway with their brand all over it and EDC. They gave everybody a Dos Equis cup, and they built this big slide. So you would enter the venue by jumping on the slide and sliding down like 3 stories, and that was like your entrance into the show. How cool is that? Kids would remember that. They took pictures of it. It really made a lasting impact. It was great for the brand. It was great for our show. It was a total win-win. Another example is 7-Up. In Las Vegas, 7-Up sponsored the 7th stage. Vegas is huge. We have 9 stages. So they sponsored the 7th stage. They actually built a nightclub, and it was the only stage at the whole festival where you could stand like on the side of the stage and look at the acts. So for us, we won't do a sponsorship deal unless the brand can add value to the fan experience and to the show as a whole. And I don't see that really happening yet here, at least the brand conversations we're having. We hope to be able to educate and teach and help bring that as we bring our shows to Asia.
Okay, so Eric, same brand. What's your experience, and more importantly, I think this is the 4th year. How has that evolved for you, the relationship with your main sponsor?
I think brand relationship for us in China is very important, not only because they help us financially, because obviously ticket sale, as Christian was saying, it's definitely not going to be able to break even. Right? So that's number 1. Number 2, when I look at brands, I look at how could I leverage on the amplification of their marketing to help build up our brand. I think that's crucial. A lot of brands that comes to us and say, listen, we've got very little budget, but we're willing to do X, Y, Z, which is very interesting on a marketing level. We might take them. Some brands may not have any marketing, but want to leverage on our platform, but they have a lot of money. So it's a hybrid of these type of brands that we look at. And John made a good point. It's not just really about money or amplification marketing. It's about experience. So we constantly ask our partner to build an experience that would actually not only resonate to the target audience that's coming to the festival, but also amplify that their DNA with Storm DNA, for example, is cool. Because that's the only reason why they're actually sponsoring us, because they want to be cool, right? Want to be part of the millennial, the culture of dance music, and want to be seen and be known, right, by these people. So they could build a long-lasting relationship and to sell the product. So going back, yes, brand relationship very, very important. It's almost, if you go out with a show without a brand relationship, it's almost like you have not been recognized.
I think just really quickly, there's a shift in America where Larry Jackson from Apple removed the agency and worked directly with Taylor Swift on her Apple TV campaign and just won a ton of awards for it. And in London, the same thing's happening where the older suits at the agencies don't understand Snapchat. They don't understand how to integrate. So I think the role also is that the agencies have to keep up. You're either going to get moved out the way because Apple, for example, knows what ad space they need to buy. They know the artists that they want to work with. We did a Beats campaign with Axel and Ingrosso, and I didn't see any agency. I sat with Jimmy Iovine, I played him something new, he took the song, then you're sat with Omar, then you're sat on a shoot, and off you go. They know what they're doing. I think agencies now also have a task, instead of complaining that, oh, I put my logo on and I didn't see 10 million new Facebook fans, to integrate, as John says and as Eric says, into the show, but also to learn how to integrate with artists. So you either get new young kids into your agency, the Saatchi and Saatchis of this world, or I think the agency is going to become obsolete. And they're very expensive.
Fantastic. Iqbal, what's your experience in working with brands?
It's all about the money. It is. For us, LiveScape's got a formula. If we get sponsorship money to cover the talent costs, we do the show. So if an artist fee is $100,000, our business development team has to go and find enough money to cover the artist costs. And then we go back and we go, okay, we're going to do the show. Because it's almost a 70% chance that we will do fine. Sponsorship money for like Malaysia, for instance, it's big money. It's 400,000, 500,000, 600,000. But what they really drive us to do is, first they have a lot of power because they're giving us a lot of money, and they expect a lot of drive. So in terms of cigarette partners, for instance, when cigarette partners come and join us, they want conversions, they want acquisitions, and they put a number per head. So it's like, oh, it's going to cost me 24 ringgit marketing to acquire a new customer to smoke my cigarette. And then what we do is
Doesn't everybody smoke already?
No, yeah, but you smoke Marlboro. Dunhill wants you to smoke their cigarette. Yeah. So what we do is we put a rules and regulation at the front, and we go, okay, you know, we don't allow open pack cigarettes into the venue because of our drug policy. When they go in, they need to buy a cigarette. They can't. Then they buy the brand, and then that helps. It's all about the numbers for us. What's happening now is that now the brands are getting more accustomed to the talents, and now they only want the top 10 DJs. So you go, oh, you know, we've got DJ Snake, and they go, no, I want Dimitri Vegas and Like Mike. And we go, no, we're not going to book Dimitri Vegas and Like Mike. And we have this problem because now they're getting a bit more, they're getting a bit more accustomed. They're going, look, we want this now, we want this, we want that. And what we're doing is we're focusing on brand. So that's why I was saying earlier, where we focus on a brand that's really good and really big so that sponsors want to be associated with the brand and they trust us to do what we do best.
And
I wanna add in there.
do the brands use the DJ Mag Top 100 as their guide as to what's...
Oh my God, you have no idea.
Unfortunately so.
For both of you.
We need a new top 100. I'm just not bought. I'm not sold on this.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, you could buy votes.
No disrespect to our friends at DJ Mag, but it just ain't the real deal.
All right, now that we know that the audience is live, I really want to also open this up for some questions. So if we could prepare a roaming mic, and you know, whoever would like to ask a question, please let us know. Difficult to see.
Hi, my name is Serena Liu, and I am Associate Artist Manager and Business Development at Major Performing Arts Group in Beijing, 美节音乐. We manage some of the high-profile classical musicians like violinists, pianists, singers, and we also have one singer and a songwriter on our roster, David Wong, who is the godfather of the Mandopop industry. And I've been at almost every panel these days, and I noticed that we didn't really talk much about the music content, which I think is the most important and valuable things nowadays. Because I know that some of the greatest electronic musicians like Alesso, Zed, and Clean Bandit. They all have classical music background, and some of the classical musicians like Lindsay, Sterling, two cellos, they all have very strong electronic music elements in their music. So my question is, how do you think of the opportunities in terms of the collaboration between different genres, and how could the classical music world and the electronic music world could benefit from each other with different resources and they possess? Yeah.
I think that's a
Thank
really
you.
interesting question, because there is actually a trend now in Europe. It's a consequence of people who are perhaps too old to want to go out at 4 a.m. and dance, and they want to hear the music they grew up loving. Pete Tong has done, there's an album coming later this year. He did a thing with the BBC where they did a prom, and they performed classic Ibiza tracks with a full orchestra. We then thought we'd try and do a show, an actual paid show with it, and to our immense surprise, we sold 16,000 tickets in 1 hour in London. So we then added more shows, obviously. But the Hacienda have done it, Cream have done it. There's now a trend where people are recognizing that classic house music can be set to orchestral pieces, and I think that's going to increase as a trend. I think a lot of people are really buying into that idea. And I think artists like Lindsay Sterling, who we represent, that they are reaching out to other communities, not just electronic, but all kinds of communities, trying to find those collaborations. But I think the trend towards performing house music with classical orchestras is definitely on the rise, and I think, personally, I'm very happy about it.
Well,
Yes.
and really quick, I mean, not that they're house, but Above and Beyond was the hottest hard ticket of the year in America, playing with the Hollywood. They sold out the Hollywood Bowl and played with the Philharmonic. They did 2 nights at the Greek Theater. I mean, it was spectacular. It was beautiful.
And in fact, I think if you go on the BBC, wasn't there a Nero classical performance? And I mean, if you've never seen it, go YouTube or whatever and see if you can find it. It was amazing. Drum and bass with a full orchestra is an immense experience. So I think it's there. It's just, we're still a relatively young industry. Even in the mature part, we're not that old. So I think these things are all to come. And I think it's a great question.
Next question, please. Yep. Annie? Oh, there we go.
It's going to be sort of a two-parter, maybe directed to David, but also the whole panel. Oh, I'm Robb from Billboard Magazine. I just wonder, David, how long have you been developing this market? You're from a major agency. How long have you been working, particularly in China, to develop your artists? Because I think it may be longer than people expect. And then the second part of the question is, as we all know, the market is blooming now, but what do you see the potential for this market? Because I think it's, tremendous.
Well, I'm trying to remember when I first came to China. It was a really long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
It was a really long time ago. I was here in '96 with Bjork. That was the first time before.
Was
the
that the
second
last
time
time
was
for her?
not quite as successful. Not a day I wish to recall. But I came here in the early '90s. I came to Shanghai with Fatboy Slim. That was the most surreal experience ever. There was a club. There was loads of photographers and a bunch of guys in suits standing around wondering what we were doing. It was not a party on any level I could describe. I think China has really surprised me, because from what I experienced in the early 90s to what it is now, it's a paradigm shift. This feels to me now like, Shanghai especially feels to me like it's going to become one of those influencer cities, a New York, a Berlin, Rome. It has that energy right now. And, I've been astonished this week at just how much there is to learn about everything that's going on here. So I hope that answers.
Amy, you actually mentioned an interesting anecdote when you first came to China. Do you mind sharing that with the audience? So in terms of the back in the day
They'll know how old I
moment?
am.
What's that?
But then they'll know how old I am.
You started very young in the business.
I came to China with Ministry of Sound when I was the head of touring there in I want to say it was 95, maybe 96. And we played in Guangzhou, Shanghai. We brought this guy called Jazzy M, who was the resident DJ there. Our two governments worked together. And all I remember is we did a gig, and you could see Jazzy M, and you could see the Ministry of Sound logo. And on every podium where you would normally obviously have a dancer, there was a soldier with a gun. And all you could see was the silhouettes of machine guns. And basically the promoter was like, if you dance with your hands in the air, you're on drugs and we'll shoot you. So we were all just kind of dancing, I mean, what do you do? And we've got a really iconic shot. It must still be at the Ministry of Sound offices of just Jazzy M, the Ministry of Sound logo, and people loving it, but just with their arms down, and then these silhouettes of just machine guns on podiums. And it was an image that I remembered with Ben earlier.
So obviously it's come a long way.
I hope that's not happening on Saturday with the Lesso, no. I'm definitely putting my hands in the air.
No, maybe Manila.
I bore witness to that, but let's get to part B of the question. What is the potential of this market? And let's just go quick from the other end, Robb.
I mean, I think there's loads of potential here. Like I said earlier, there's new markets like Myanmar opening up that went from one show a year to 7 or 8 festivals this year. And I mean, that's obviously accelerated growth, and next year, 9 of those guys will be out of business. But I think that's happening in many places, like in Southeast Asia. China in general, I think the opportunities here are massive, and it's just going to keep getting bigger.
Please.
Oh, I think that's more for Eric.
You mean this market, China?
Well, no, I was just going to move along because, we're doing Asia-Pacific, so...
Oh, Asia,
Yeah,
sorry.
Asia-Pacific. Or was your question China only?
Yeah, it was China. That's why I was like, oh, it's more of an Eric thing.
Okay, well, then we go to Eric.
Well, I'll chime in.
Okay, all right.
I think the opportunity here is massive. I can't tell you how much incoming email I get from, some big state-owned company that wants to bring us to China, from some billionaire guy that wants to bring us to China, from some kid who says he's dating the prime minister's daughter and has political connections who wants to bring us to
I've
China.
had that email.
So I'm here, and that's why I'm here, because we think it's a massive opportunity, and it's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm here. So from our perspective, we're looking at, at least in our company, 3-digit growth every year, a couple 100% every single year. So just from our perspective, we see this is, when you're hitting a 3-digit growth, that's a massive growth, exponential growth on a yearly basis. And looking, obviously listen to John, and of course David here will tell you that they've got a lot of incoming, and the problem is that how do you dissect this incoming and actually be able to determine these are actual real leads? Billionaire, like the billionaire kids, they maybe a one-time gig.
We're not doing that deal.
Yeah, good.
I mean, let's be frank. You've got 200 cities. This could potentially be the biggest market in the world. It's that simple.
All right. We have time for one more question. So please raise your hand. Do we see it? Any more? Going, gone. Thank you very much to the panelists for their time.
Thank you.